It's Nancy welcoming you to Garden Scroll. So my husband and I have been getting a few things ready to spruce the place up a little bit. He bought these for me yesterday to replace some that are totally disintegrating. And then actually, if you'll pan up to that purple Martin house that needs replacing so badly, we actually bought another one. We found one. I don't know when we'll get it up, but hopefully it won't take us too awfully long before we get it up. But we're getting a little bit excited about getting it cleaned out. Once you get a little space cleaned out, because I've cleaned this out yesterday, and it just makes a world of difference. We took off 2 trash bags full of debris, and I have one little area cleaned out. But it feels good, except for this grass right here. I've got to get rid of this grass. I don't like it. It keeps going and going and going, and that's okay if you want it to go and go and go, but I really don't. I prefer having something else here. And then these are a couple of logs that my friend I was telling you about from church that Gardens 2 gave me. So all this area is somewhat cleaned out, and it's the only area, of course, of the garden that is, because everything else is just full of dead sticks that I've got to clean. And today is actually too cool for that. But I did want to say a few things that I had thought about the garden. One day this week, I woke up thinking there was a show I used to watch on TV about a gardening show. What was that called? And then it finally came to me that it was called A Gardener's Diary. And in that it had, looky there, that's how cold it is. There's ice in the bird baths. But I remembered that it was called A Gardener's Diary, and I remembered the little poem they used to say at the first of it. It said, "What grows in the garden so lovely and rare? Dahlias and roses and people grow there." And I can tell you why the garden is rare. There's lots of reasons why the garden is rare. But probably number one is because if it's a flower garden, it's not a necessity. It's a luxury. A luxury that you have to work as hard for as any other necessity. But it brings so much peace and beauty. Maybe more beauty than it does peace, because when you're out there working harder than you really should be working, maybe, there's not a lot of peace in that until you get it done, and then it is, because it can just become so beautiful. I know this doesn't look beautiful. This looks more like the one I was telling you when the guy that had come out to help me with my well one time, and he said it sure is a mess. And it was a mess. This is a mess. This is the most, I called it once the most horriblest job there is in gardening, and I truly do think it is. So I actually wrote down a little bit about why it's so rare. Why is a garden so rare? In the first place, you start out and you have all this hopes and dreams for your garden. Look at this coming up in here. Isn't that great? We'll probably have a snow. We haven't had one yet. We'll probably have several different things that stop some of this from coming along before we have to clean it all out and get going again. Look at all this grass and mess that I'm going to have to be cleaning up. But I'll get it done, Lord willing, and helping me. But let me go ahead and read some of this to you. Oh my goodness, here's another mess right here. This is falling off. I don't know if I can get it back on with the camera. I think I'll probably have to wait I think I'll just take that back off until I can get both hands. But I put, I did put, first of all, if it's a flower garden, it's a luxury, not a necessity. And most or many of us are struggling to deal with what is necessary in life. Our school and our training, our jobs, our families and their wants and needs, our homes and the upkeep on them, and maybe a church or a social group of some kind. At some time in life, we usually learn no man is an island, but we all need each other in some way. Proverbs 27:17 of the King James Version of the Bible says, "Iron sharpeneth iron, so a man sharpeneth the countenance of his friend." You know, your face lights up when you see somebody you love to see. You're gonna just have a feeling come over you that you just love it, and you know that you've shared things together and that your life has touched each other and it's been touched for good, and that's a wonderful feeling. Then gardening takes a certain amount of energy, stamina, and let's face it, finance. When we are young, we may or may not have all that, but we may not be able to spread ourselves thin enough to do everything we want to do. When we wait until we're older, maybe retired from a job, and maybe our children are grown, we often do not have the energy and health to work a garden, and a garden takes a lot of work. As I think about all the ways a garden exemplifies life itself, I think about when my garden was a bare backyard and a vision in my head. When I was first planting little seeds and roots, my husband and our youngest daughter, who was in high school, I did get to start my garden before our last child left home, but they would shake their heads and roll their eyes at my seemingly futile efforts. But little by little, year after year, the backyard as well as the front yard turned into a garden. Some of it is more beautiful than I dreamed, but there have been many setbacks. And first let me also put in here that even it really there's some places where it's actually more beautiful than I ever dreamed it would be, even though right now you're not seeing it. You're not going to see it this time of year. Today is actually January the 21st, 2020. But there's been lots of things. The Lord has given me this picnic table. I used to want a redwood table. I remember the time that the lady that kept my daughter for me while I worked had one for sale at her garage sale in her front yard, and I wanted it so bad, but I didn't go out and look at it. I didn't touch it. I didn't ask her how much it was because I was giving her the last bit of money that I had for taking care of my daughter that week. So, and that's the way life goes sometimes. But back to my reading here, I have had many setbacks. Insects have destroyed plants that have been or need to be replaced. Just a second, I'm going to turn my page over here. And my fingers are too cold. Winds have torn down fences and actually uprooted plants and bushes. I used to have one right here behind. This is covered right now, but this is that little boy and girl at the pump, at a water pump. And there used to be a sunshine caryopteris right here, and the winds came through and just literally pulled it out of the ground. It wasn't totally out, and I thought maybe it would live, but it just kept on dying. I had to take it out. I would like to replace that at some time. They have little blue tufts that are just beautiful, and especially with that golden yellowish green color of the foliage itself. But moles and gophers have gotten fat, while my tulips have become practically non-existent. Practically every cat in our neighborhood has descended on the garden, ignored the rodents, and stalked the pretty birds until they eventually killed many of them and scared most of the rest away. Harsh summer heat has turned things to crispy brown or completely took them out. Harsh summer heat has come close to taking the gardener out. But so far I'm hanging in there. Believe you me, there's been times when I didn't know if I really was going to make it. And then that exemplifies our life. Back to it, exemplifying our life. We just never know what life is going to hold. And life is beautiful. You just think about beauty and the beauty of life. There is so much beauty in life. A baby, a new child, all this. How smart they are. There's nothing smarter than a 2-year-old soaking up everything and using it right back at you in a way that you can't say that's not right because you taught that to them. They're using it on you now, and they're smart enough to do that. But life can be hard, and its beauty can be elusive during those difficult times. We can teach our children everything we have learned, and it may help them to avoid some pitfalls in life. But as I mentioned in another YouTube post, in Ecclesiastes 9:1, for all this I considered in my heart, even to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before him. Life can seem so easy for some people. Maybe it really is, but maybe they just haven't faced their trial or the hardship of their lives yet. Or we just can't see the life trials they have faced. Just as one could look on the garden on a day of perfect temperature and see nothing but beauty without the knowledge of what has taken place to get the garden to that point, or what the garden may face in the future. I like to think that God is in the garden. We know He has interest in gardening. I think He is there to share the beauty and the joys and to help us with our labors in the garden and to overcome the evils that come upon the garden. Another example of how He abides in our lives, because how would we make it without Him? I mean, some people think they do, but they don't. There's another scripture that says, even if we believe not, He abideth faithful. He cannot deny Himself. So I'm anxious to get all this stuff out of here, but not anxious enough to actually come out here and do it. But I will do this at one point. Lord willing and helping me, I will get it done, and we'll have a beautiful garden again to scroll through. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I've been trying to get this channel going now for 3 years actually, but I took the first year off and started over, so it's kind of been more like 2 years. But anyway, it's time to get going good with this, I think, and I just believe there's a lot of people out there who will enjoy it. I know I've had people from my church tell me they do, and thank you so much. Of Carlotta and everybody else that's shared it with me. And let's continue to go on Garden Scrolls together.